Well, hey there, partner. It's Jack Moose here. Just doing another video to revive the YouTube channel. I've stopped doing weekly videos and I got more into doing my own material. Still do live looping live a lot. It's a tool as opposed to the only thing. For the last year, I branched out and learned how to use software a bit more, specifically Ableton. I wanted to do a little tutorial about a new song I wrote called, a new song I just released called Amelia. I wanted to break down how I put the skeleton of the song together. So let's get down to it. Alright, so here's a little breakdown. I've got a 4-bar loop that I'm going to set up here. And the whole thing was started with what is aptly titled here, The Pulse. Now, The Pulse came about initially because I wanted to create a track. I was kind of bored with traditional bass sounds. I wanted to do something. This is a massive sound, as many of these are. This is coming off of Native Instruments Massive. It's a preset called Brass Stab that I manipulated a little bit. I think I was going, initially I thought I was going to make like a hip-hop track. I think I was thinking of like that song Stacks in My Jeans by Snoop Dogg, and then Shut Up, which is by Trick Daddy, I think. Trick Daddy or Chameleonaire. I can't remember. Anyway, where a low brass sound kind of acts as that. Now, at the same time, I was listening to the soundtrack to Assault on Precinct 13 by John Carpenter, which has a prominent bass line featured. So what I wanted to do is create a somewhat updated thing that could be considered interesting, a figure that could be considered interesting coming from the bass. So let me give this a shot here. Oh, and let me set up the metronome because I am not perfect. And through the magic of quantization, we get this. So it's like a 5/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 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 no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I had that. I like the idea of simplicity, even though it often doesn't end up staying simplistic. Anyway, I wanted to keep going with that interesting rhythmic idea from if you listen to songs like Thriller, for example. I learned doing live looping one time. The amount of back and forth you get from the percussion on the left and right sides that are panned adds a really subtle but really important layer to the overall richness of the track. Percussion is really important. I never used to pay attention to it, but anyway, here I put a clave pattern of sorts. I sort of manipulated it a little bit, but using clave. So here we go. Okay. Like so. Contrast that with a very basic bass and drum thing. This is an 808 kit. I wasn't going out on a limb or anything like that with my choice of kits here. It's 808 with a couple 909 things subbed in. Just that one little variation in the snare drum, that's it. Otherwise, keeping pretty consistent. Now, at this point, as I was building the track, I was thinking, okay, this is really turning into a retro thing, which I'm down with, don't get me wrong, but I don't want it to just sit in one place necessarily. So the one thing I could do that I thought would mesh okay with the track, because they use 808s in this style anyway. Trap music has really sort of turned the hi-hat into more of an interactive instrument. The best producers that I've heard, best produced tracks, are not stagnant in their eighth note, or in their open in their hi-hat use. I think a lot of producers go in and try to vary the performances on their track. I think probably just to humanize things a little bit, because if you got a session drummer, you know, back in the days, as they say, they probably would not play everything the same. So cut and paste feels a little bit lazy. So what I'm doing is I'm inserting some 30-second notes, just pressing Command D to after I've cut, and then duplicate these. They usually sound good on beats 2 and 4, sort of mimicking a drummer doing a double stroke on an actual kit. However, for that reason, it's nice to put them even on the beat as well, because you want to create some kind of, or I want to create some kind of unexpected element. I don't want to just make a track where you know exactly what's going to happen. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to recreate exactly what I did with the actual song. So let's see, we have 16th note triplets. That's going to be da 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 da, like that. That's as wild as we're going to get for this track. So it's going to sound like da 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 da. And then I even get into these 8th note triplets, which will be like this. 8th note triplets can be a little bit tricky, mainly because I think there's a balance with hi-hats. You don't want them to stick out too much, because then they're just going to get in the way, and it's not going to be the kind of sound you want. But you want them to be interesting enough that I sort of always feel like the listener is going to turn off. So I read somewhere, whether it's true or not, that all the modern pop music guys have it down to a science. Once every 7 seconds, something new has to happen in a track. I don't know that I believe that, or that I believe they follow that. However, it is important to be aware of when development should happen, or when something has gone one repeat too long, or what have you. So now I'm just going to go back to relatively safe 30-second notes. I'll show you what I did with that triplet rhythm in a moment, once I satisfy my need for variation here. So check out bar 3. It's coming up here, right here. That didn't quite do what I wanted it to. Let's check that out. What I want there, da 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 da. I don't think I did that because I'm gabbing here. Yes, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted it to create a sense that the track was slowing down. So for a moment, people would be like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" So let's try this again. Yep. Hear that again. So bar 3, pay attention to that one. And then it jumps right back. Now let's add some harmonic basis to this track. I'm just going to draw this in because it's not playing back for me, and I don't remember why, or I don't know why. So many questions. There's definitely some lag going on here. If anybody wants to, this is literally my first time ever recording video off screen. Blah blah blah. I hate it when people do stuff like this. Please excuse this if it's a little bit, if I'm a little bit slow. So what I'm doing is I am drawing in a pretty stock D major chord. I generally don't like to have chords be this straightforward, just because it's not such a human way to play. Keyboard players rarely want to play a 1, 3, and 5. The amount of variation they put, let's pitch that up a full octave. The amount of variation they put into their voicings, there we go. The amount of variation they put into their voicings is pretty huge, and it's in really sneaky kind of ways. You don't think that you don't notice it. So the one thing I've done, my little personal stamp, is to put an A on the bottom, so it's a D over A technically. Is that really important? I don't know. Makes me feel happier. Makes me sleep at night a little easier. So that right there is giving us a major chord. Only root 3 and 5 are the only 3 different bits of information. Now, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to turn on my camera here. Okay, so the melody is on this also aptly titled Nin Synth. Don't leave much up to the imagination. What's going on there is I am playing something that sort of sits in a key that Trent Reznor would honestly use, which is basically a mixolydian. So the let's take that up like 3 octaves. So it's so right there what we've got is a major, but with the flat 7 in there for the first half. Because I wanted to keep things, if I didn't mention it before, I want to keep things relatively static, keep it relatively minimal in terms of the key. So we're sitting in D, but more specifically D mixolydian. However, after that first part, I sneak that minor 3rd in there. So we're alternating between major-ish and minor. So let me go ahead and perform that. Here we are. Oh, yeah. All right, let's try that again. And then, for simplicity's sake, we shall cut and paste. So that's the hook before any vocals actually come in. And that's the basis of the track off the top. The only other thing was I wasn't convinced on this off the bat. I didn't feel like this really justified itself as a thing. I haphazardly put delay on. Started with just the left channel. And then as the song develops, and then one last thing, I took the cutoff for the filter, and then later on, as once the chorus part intensifies, raised up the cutoff to let in those higher frequencies. So that creates development right there. It goes from this to this, right? And there you go. So there you have it. If you guys have any questions or thoughts, this is the first time I've done a video like this. I know it's probably really long. Hopefully it was interesting. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to do another one, despite how complicated it was. Leave me a comment, leave me a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I intend to post more often. I know people say that all the time, but I mean it. So this is Jack Moves signing off. I shall see you next time.